Within this exercise, I'm using some white rails here, which are raised, but you can use anything at all in a straight line. You can use poles, a longer poles if you like. Ideally, riding to specific points would be great. So you can use a coloured pole, stick to a specific point. You'll see I use a box there as well, quite an open box each end. I've got one at the top and one at the other end. And these are designed so that I can go in and out the box depending on what level of technicality or difficulty or what level of development your horse is at. I aim always start in walk, familiarise the horse. Ideally, you'll be able to use the poles to be able to measure your straightness. So you can tell if the horse is bouncing off the poles or he's hanging to them. And it really helps you be able to steer with the leg. Ideally, you'd like to keep an even still hand and not use the inside rein too much. So ideally your hands would be a pair and you'd steer really with your leg and being very conscious of your seat. Your seat wants to be equal on both seat bones, so there's not more pressure on the outside or the inside. And ideally the shoulders would also be square. So yeah, start off in walk and actually work in the different frames as well. It's really important to use, a longer frame as well as working towards your sort of medium walk. Then start to work off in trot, starting, get the feel of the exercise, and really is just about finding your rhythm to start with. Again, using, the poles as a measure of where you're at. I can't get that close to them particularly with this horse at the moment. I'd like to think I'm training this horse, correctly to be a really good top event horse. So my aim is to be able to use this exercise to help sort of squash him a little bit together and to be able to make sure that he goes equally into both reins. I struggle, then start to work along the leg yields, and I struggle with this horse that actually once I'm on a straight line, I really lose his connection. He tends to go a little bit high and sometimes before the rails, and you can't necessarily see it in that one, but before the rails, he lifts his head up. And so I use the box at each end to be able to reconnect him again, and then using the leg yield to be able to help work specifically from leg to hand to be able to keep him in an even contact, and then working very much the tram lines afterwards. So he's got to stay straight afterwards. So I've got a measure of where I am as far as straightness, and I'm going to use the box again to be able to make sure that I reconnect and push him again around the circle, around the square, and keep gently turning him with the outside leg. Obviously catching still with the inside as well though, trying to see if I can be able to push him all the time, thinking, right, push the hind legs around to the front, push the hind legs around to the front. Don't let him drift left, because he loves to drift left, this horse, and it makes his contact go. And you'll see me sometimes have to sort of really work a little bit harder with the left leg and the left rein, saying, come on, let's turn, let's push around. I start to slow him down and start to be able to get him a little bit less quick, to be able to then think, actually, I might start to think about going on that inside of the box. And you'll see I bounce out of the box to start with, which is natural. So I've got to be able to think, right, what aid do I need to use? I need to use more outside leg to be able to push him round, to be able to turn him inside the box. And I can only do one good square at the moment, or a couple, to then be able to then, before I lose it. So you're better to do a little bit and then go back to it. So rather than round and round and round lots of times. But what each time it does is I'll be able to, work him slightly better up the straight line, that I'm creating in the square in the box. I'm then able to keep a bit more and down the long sides. So I'm sort of reinforcing the leg to hand and the turning around this square. And then, being able to then use that to be able to help with the long sides again. And then I start to be able to mix it up a little bit. I start to think, well, actually, this is coming quite nice, quite like this. So I'm going to then, rather than leg yield over the rail, I'm going to leg yield around the rail. So I start then to go too far and then start to then be able to push back and go towards the tram lines again. You start to be able to see, right, how much can I go to the right and how much then can I go to the left? And as I go along, I think, okay, well, this is good. I'm going to start to go braver and push across a bit more. I also want to be able to transfer a bit of the weight to the direction of travel in my stirrup. So if I'm leg yielding towards the left there, my weight should be a little bit stronger into the left stirrup. However, that mustn't change the seat bone, though. The seat bones must stay the same, must stay level, or the shoulders should. So you shouldn't start tipping your shoulders either way. Whatever we do on one rein, you need to make sure you do on the other rein. And also you want to be able to have a comparison, what is better, which rein is easier, which rein do I struggle with, and which rein needs a bit more development. personally, although I struggle a little bit on the right rein because he falls out on the out of the left shoulder, I actually find the right rein easier. I find the left rein a little bit more tricky because he blocks a little bit on the left hand. So sometimes I find I'm fiddling a little bit too much with the left hand. And this is why this exercise is really good, because it means I have to ride to a stiller left rein. You'll see there, again, he comes against the left rein as I'm going towards that white rail. So I think actually I'm not going to go over the white rail there because I know he's going to invert too much. So I'm going to do a little bit towards the inside and work again on the suppleness and making sure that the connection is better by then not going over the rail and then coming to the outside. Here you can see I start to mix it up, start to add in some transitions. Again, he sort of slightly falls onto the left shoulder, so I add in the walk transition at the end.